The question is simple. Did Neanderthals fall in love? The answer isn't. We can't travel back in time. We can't sit with a Neanderthal family around a fire and ask them. We have no letters, no poems, no songs. All we have are their bones, their tools, and the faint traces they left on the earth. And yet, from these silent clues, a picture emerges. It's a picture of a complex, intelligent, and deeply social people. A people who likely felt the same powerful bonds of connection that we do. To find love in their world, we have to look for its shadow, its echo in the stone and dust. We have to look for evidence of care, of loyalty, of attachment. First, we have to agree on what we mean by love. It's not just a fleeting feeling or a romantic notion from a movie. Biologically, love is a suite of behaviors and emotions that help us survive and reproduce. It's the powerful bond between a parent and a child. It's the loyalty between partners that helps them raise those children. It's the empathy that holds a group together, allowing them to cooperate and protect one another. These are not just human inventions, they are ancient evolutionary strategies. If we look for these things, parental care, pair bonding, and communal empathy, we can start to answer the question. Let's start with their brains. A Neanderthal's brain was, on average, slightly larger than ours. The shape was different, longer, and lower, but the overall size means they had the raw cognitive horsepower for complex thought and emotion. Brains are expensive organs. They burn a lot of calories. Evolution doesn't build a big, expensive brain for no reason. It's built for processing a complex world, and for Neanderthals, that world was overwhelmingly social. Their brains had large areas dedicated to visual processing, which was essential for navigating their environment and hunting. But they also had the necessary structures for social cognition, the ability to understand and interact with others. While the exact wiring was different from ours, the hardware was there. They had the capacity for complex emotions. They weren't just simple brutes driven by instinct. Their minds were vast and capable. Now let's look at how they lived. Neanderthals were not lone wanderers. They lived in small, tight-knit groups. They were apex predators, hunting massive and dangerous animals like mammoths, woolly rhinos, and giant cave bears. You don't hunt a mammoth by yourself. You can't. It requires a team, it requires communication, coordination, and an incredible amount of trust. You need to trust that the person next to you will do their job, that they won't run when the animal charges. You need to anticipate their movements, and they need to anticipate yours. This kind of high-stakes cooperation forges powerful bonds. These weren't just colleagues on a hunt, they were family. Their survival depended on their reliance on each other. This reliance, this deep-seated trust, is a foundation for love. It's a form of loyalty that says, I have your back, and you have mine. But the most powerful evidence we have for Neanderthal emotion doesn't come from their successes. It comes from their failures, their injuries, and their vulnerabilities. The Neanderthal fossil record is filled with evidence of a hard and brutal life. Their skeletons show an incredible number of healed fractures and injuries, similar to the patterns seen in modern rodeo riders. They got hurt, a lot, but many of these injuries were not fatal because someone cared for them. Consider the famous old man of La Chapelle aux Saints, a Neanderthal found in a cave in France. He was old for his time, maybe around 40. He had lost most of his teeth, which would have made it very difficult to eat tough, raw meat. He also had severe arthritis in his spine and a healed broken hip. He would have been slow, in constant pain, and unable to hunt. In a world governed purely by survival of the fittest, he would have been a burden. He would have been left behind, but he wasn't. He lived for years with these debilitating conditions. Someone had to have been helping him. Someone was likely chewing his food for him, making it soft enough for him to swallow. Someone was keeping him warm and protecting him from predators. This isn't just instinct. This is sustained, long-term compassion. It is an act of care, an act of love. Then there is an even more remarkable case from the Shanidar Cave in Iraq. Here, archaeologists found the remains of a Neanderthal known as Shanidar I. He lived a life of incredible hardship. A crushing blow to the left side of his head when he was young had damaged his brain, likely leaving his right arm and leg paralyzed and useless. He was also probably partially blind in his left eye. His right arm was withered and had been amputated or broken off above the elbow. He was severely disabled from a young age, and yet he lived to be around 40 or 50 years old, an ancient age for that time. He could not have hunted effectively. He could not have defended himself well. He would have needed constant help. His group didn't discard him. They supported him. They fed him. They protected him for decades. They carried his weight. Why? Because he was one of them. He was a member of their family, their community. To keep such a person alive is a profound statement about their values. It demonstrates a capacity for empathy and commitment that is indistinguishable from love. It shows that an individual's worth was not just based on their physical ability to contribute. Their worth was intrinsic. They mattered. This care extends even beyond life. There is a long-standing debate about whether Neanderthals buried their dead, but the evidence is growing stronger. At sites like Shannon Cave and La Chapelle aux Saints, bodies were found deliberately placed in pits, sometimes in a flexed fetal position. This act of burial is significant. It means they didn't just leave their dead to be scavenged by hyenas. They took the time and effort to create a final resting place. This suggests they had a concept of death that went beyond mere biological cessation. It suggests a bond with the deceased that didn't just vanish when they stopped breathing. Grief is the price we pay for love. The careful handling of the dead is an expression of that grief, a final act of care for someone who was cherished. One of the burials at Shanidar, known as Shanidar 4, was famously found with clumps of pollen surrounding the skeleton. This led to the romantic idea of a flower burial, with the body laid to rest on a bed of wildflowers. While more recent analysis suggests the pollen might have been brought into the cave by burrowing rodents, the very act of a deliberate burial remains. It's an act of remembrance. It's a way of saying, you were important to us. Now, what about romantic love? The kind of pair bonding we see in many human societies. This is harder to see in the fossil record. We can't dig up a feeling, but we can make logical inferences based on their biology and the challenges they faced. Raising a child, whether a human or a Neanderthal child, is incredibly difficult. Neanderthal children likely had a long childhood, similar to ours. They were helpless for years. They required a huge investment of time, energy, and resources. A single mother in that harsh Ice Age environment would have had an almost impossible task. She would need to care for a dependent child while also providing food and protection for both of them. The stable pair, Bondo, a partnership, it would have been a massive evolutionary advantage. A male partner could provide protection and hunt for high-calorie meat, while the female focused on childcare and other foraging activities. This division of labor makes raising a child much more viable. For such a partnership to work over the long term, it couldn't be based on just a fleeting impulse. It would need to be cemented by a deep emotional attachment, a bond of loyalty, affection, and mutual support. We might call this love. This pair bond ensures that the father sticks around and invests in his offspring, giving them a much better chance of survival. Given the long and difficult Neanderthal childhood, it's highly probable that such long-term partnerships were common. And then there's the most intimate evidence of all written in our own DNA. We know with absolute certainty that modern humans and Neanderthals had children together. Many people of non-African descent today carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA in their genomes. This wasn't a one-time event. It happened multiple times in different places over thousands of years. Think about what this means. These encounters between our two groups were not always violent conflicts over territory. Sometimes they were intimate. They involved seeing each other not just as a competing other, but as individuals, as potential partners. We can't know the specifics of these relationships. Were they long-term partnerships? In brief encounters, was it love or something else? We will never know for sure. But the fact that they produced children who were then raised and integrated into their groups tells us something profound. It tells us there was a level of social acceptance and connection that transcended the species barrier. For a human to accept a Neanderthal partner, or vice versa, and for their community to accept their hybrid child requires a level of social complexity and perhaps even affection that we often deny them. It's hard to imagine this happening repeatedly without some form of emotional bond, some recognition of shared humanity. The ghost of a Neanderthal lover exists inside many of us today. Did they have the tools to express these complex emotions? We often think of language as a uniquely human trait, but the evidence suggests Neanderthals may have had some form of complex vocal communication. Their hyoid bone, a small bone in the neck that supports the tongue and is crucial for speech, was virtually identical to ours. They also have the same version of the FOXP2 gene that is strongly linked to language and speech in modern humans. They likely didn't have the same range of sounds we do, but they could almost certainly talk. And if you can talk, you can do more than just say, "There's a deer over there." You can share your feelings, you can comfort a crying child, you can tell a story. You can reassure a partner, you can mourn a friend. Language is the tool we use to build and maintain our social bonds. It turns a feeling into a shared experience. If Neanderthals had language, they had a way to build a rich and complex emotional world. They also had a glimmer of symbolism, of art. They used pigments like red ochre, possibly for body decoration. They collected eagle talons and drilled holes in them, likely to be worn as necklaces or ornaments. They arranged stalagmites in a circle deep within a cave in Brunical, France, long before modern humans arrived in Europe. These are not acts of survival. They are acts of meaning. They show a mind that is thinking beyond the next meal. A mind that is creating a symbolic world. Love, in its deepest sense, is about meaning. It's about another person meaning more to you than anyone else. It's about your child being the center of your world. A mind that can create symbols is a mind that can create that kind of meaning. Wearing an ornament might be a way of expressing identity, of saying, this is who I am, or this is who I belong to. So when we put all the pieces together, what do we see? We see a species with large, complex brains. We see a people who lived in tight, cooperative groups and trusted each other with their lives. We see overwhelming evidence of sustained compassion for the weak, the old, and the sick. We see a people who likely mourned their dead and treated their bodies with respect. We see a reproductive strategy that would have strongly favored long-term pair bonds. And we see their genetic legacy in our own species, a testament to intimate connections that cross the species line. Did Neanderthals fall in love? To say no, you would have to believe that they could care for a disabled family member for decades, but not feel a deep bond of affection. You would have to believe they could trust a partner on a dangerous hunt, but not feel loyalty. You would have to believe they could raise a vulnerable child through years of hardship, but not feel overwhelming parental love. You would have to believe they could be intimate enough with their own ancestors to have children, but that these acts were devoid of any emotion or connection. That seems less likely than the alternative. The alternative is that Neanderthals were, in their own way, just as human as we are. Their world was different. Their minds may have been wired differently. Their expression of love may not have looked exactly like ours. But the underlying emotions, the attachment, the empathy, the loyalty, the grief, were almost certainly there. They were etched into their brains by millions of years of evolution, just as they are in ours. They were essential for their survival. We tend to imagine Neanderthals as stooped, brutish cavemen, a failed experiment of evolution, but the evidence paints a very different picture. It shows us a people who were resilient, intelligent, and capable of profound social and emotional depth. They navigated a brutal world not just with strength and cunning, but with cooperation and compassion. They loved their children, they cared for their elders, they mourned their dead. They formed bonds of trust and loyalty that held their small societies together. So, yes, it is almost certain that they fell in love. Not a storybook love, perhaps, but a real, powerful, and deeply necessary love. A love forged in the cold of the Ice Age around a flickering fire in a cave. A love that is visible not in words, but in a healed bone, in a carefully placed body, and in the faint echo of their genes that we still carry with us today. They were not just a different species, they were a different kind of people who lived and, yes, loved.